Back in 1982, I had the opportunity to get engaged in a new industry at that point that was on the cutting edge of innovation called cellular telephones. And all of the experts at that point thought it would take the world 30 years to develop out a wireless network, and at the end of that 30 years, about 5% of Americans would use them. Luckily for me, the experts were wrong. And now these devices transform our lives. Getting it right from all of the regulatory, financial, consumer points around virtual currencies, and Bitcoin in particular, could pose as great, if not greater, challenge and opportunity. Think about the notion with this 21 million Bitcoins that could be created, and as we see acceptance, I understand already the FEC has allowed political contributions to be made in Bitcoin. So this is a development that's already in process. But if this becomes a standard currency or tool, it could radically and dramatically transform the role of central banks, monetary policy, because I do think there could at least be the potential of serious implications about monetary policy. You know, we have taken, even though with Congress's recent actions, sometimes we seem to be jeopardizing America's status as the reserve currency with some of our, I think, mistakes we've made. But you know, if you think a little broadly, this could, again, have huge, huge implications. The fact that we're talking about something in the virtual world really has, again, remarkable ramifications. I don't want to overuse my telecom analogy, but just as we saw in developing countries in many ways, as they develop telecom networks to skip the wired system and immediately go to wireless, wouldn't those regimes that have either huge currency restrictions or enormously underbanked, couldn't you actually see initially the development of these virtual currencies actually quicker and faster in the underdeveloped world than in the developed world?
This latest generation of technology, which we're talking about today, takes things to a whole new level. With the creation of virtual currencies like Bitcoin and more recently Ripple, we are actually seeing payments transacted entirely with peer-to-peer trust driving the stores of value. Combined with open source code and a public transaction ledger listing every transaction, virtual currencies are truly a completely different animal. Similar to the ways that the last decade's innovations out of the Silicon Valley and Silicon Forest have improved people's lives, I had to throw Silicon Forest in there because that's in Oregon. Developments in virtual currency have real potential to provide value to American consumers and businesses. Lower transaction costs, more secure money transmission. These are significant qualities. I wanted to note, I have a recent article here called Portland Businesses Enter the World of Digital Currency. Back in 2009, Greg Abbott, the owner of Whiffy's Fried Pies, was hanging out with a bunch of tech enthusiasts along his food cart. And he was discussing the potential of then new online currency known as Bitcoin. And one of the folks hanging out, an early investor, offered Abbott 1,000 Bitcoins for one of his hand pies. He says, quote, "I didn't say no, I just got distracted and the individual wandered off." And then he says, "That was a $250,000 mistake, silly me." Well, based on yesterday's value, that's a $700,000 mistake. That certainly would have been the most expensive pie in the history of humankind. This is absolutely fascinating. By the way, he did proceed to start accepting Bitcoins, as a number of Portland facilities have done.
Today we're here to learn about virtual currencies and cryptocurrencies. The most popular, of course, which is Bitcoin. While generations of Nevada have mined for gold and silver, copper, today Nevadans can now mine for new virtual currencies on their computer. While these virtual currencies are not yet widely accepted, the number of users continue to grow. The internet is a new frontier of innovation. With every new internet-based technology, I believe that members of Congress should recognize that we often don't know what these new advancements will develop into. While we must ensure proper safeguards, it is my hope that through hearings like this, we can help maintain an environment that continues to promote new financial technologies and innovative growth. So,
Senator Kirk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just thank you for gathering us together on this Bitcoin effort. Would say that I have been worried about Bitcoin some, that because it's so complicated, it could facilitate illegal activities or terrorist activities.
Thank you, Senator Kirk.
In the category of shameless plugs, congratulations on holding a hearing on something that could be a problem later on and is not a crisis right now. It's such a rare moment. Frequently in these situations, we think about how we're going to fix it or facilitate it when maybe we should just leave it alone. And maybe that's the approach that we need to think about.
A while back, as you know, I called on federal authorities to shut down the website Silk Road, which they recently did. Many people interpreted my action at the Times as directed at Bitcoin, because Bitcoin was the sole method of payment on Silk Road, and assumed that I also wanted to shut down or stamp out Bitcoin. That is not the case. I do not want to shut down or stamp out Bitcoin. New York sits in many ways at the nexus of all the issues being discussed today. As financial capital, the potential for creation of a new payment platform and the rise of alternative currencies could have profound and exciting implications for the way we conduct financial transactions. As a rapidly growing hub for technology and VC venture capital, New York has every interest in building on the promise that technologies like Bitcoin have to revolutionize payment systems or even form the building blocks for whole new technology platforms.
Earlier this afternoon, I posted on Reddit this hearing topic and asked Kansans in particular to comment on what I should know, what would be some suggestions for questions that they might have. And interesting, in just the last few hours, 125 responses, most of them very long and thoughtful. But what benefits does our economy and our innovative environment gain by encouraging or at least not discouraging the Bitcoin from being centered here?
So I think what we gain is our continued reputation and economic advantage as being the country where innovators come to start new businesses, and that gives us great economic value, and something we would want to continue. So I think the great challenge for the regulators are to encourage innovation wherever we can, and put smart regulation in place that tries to deal with risks, very real risks about which we need to be concerned, but minimizes burden on innovation.
You know, clearly the United States, the mother of invention, we want to take advantage of innovation, and to the extent that we see innovation in this space, that could have spillover effects into other payments or other financial industries, or even beyond the financial services industry. So we want to be able to encourage innovation and have it developed here locally.
First, Mr. Gallipi, what is your transaction fee?
So our transaction fee when we first started was 1%. So compared to credit cards are around 3%, we're 1%. But we realized very quickly that our marginal cost to do a transaction is low. So we've actually switched over to a software as a service pricing model. Different features and different levels of service. Merchants pay one monthly fee, then they can transact all they want with no transaction fees.
So I've got Wi-Fi's out in Oregon that says it likes to accept Bitcoins because it has 1/10 of 1% transaction fee. Do any of your transaction fees go that low?
Possibly. Well, if you take our monthly service and divide it by the volume that you put through, you could get something that low. That's correct.
Okay, that's fascinating. Thank you.
This is either going to take off and be the next great thing, it's going to be the cell phone of 20 years ago, or it's going to be a nice experiment.
Mr. Gallipi is talking about these very low transaction fees, which will make many of my merchants in Oregon, their eyes light up.
When I think about Bitcoin, we kind of tend to use it as a generic term, but in reality, at least for me, it really is three things. It's a currency, potentially, or a security. It is, secondarily, the way we use it, a depository system. So the wallets and whatnot. And third, it is a payment system. So we're talking about kind of three different realms that I think we need to think about individually. I do think that it, as I mentioned in the testimony, it has value in showing us that there are ways that we can make the payment system more rapid, we can perhaps make it less expensive, we can make it more available to the unbanked and in some cases to people who might not otherwise be able to use a payment system.
On that Silk Road issue, the FBI seized about 144,000 Bitcoins. What does the federal government do with those?
So luckily that's not an issue that we'll have to deal with at FinCEN, but I can tell you from my past job as the head of the forfeiture program that they will be thinking about whether they can sell those assets.
Do they still have them?
I would have to defer to my colleagues at the Department of Justice.
So one of the things is that we're seeing in a relatively short period of time important path-breaking changes in technology of the characters that Senator Warner suggested earlier, and we need to be very cautious not to chill those innovations, but we still need to have appropriate legal regimes around them. And I think it's important that we take some time and craft those legal regimes with great care and in as flexible a way as possible. I also believe that customers of programs such as Bitcoin and other virtual currencies that may develop should get the same federal protections that people get under Gramm-Leach-Bliley, under the Right to Financial Privacy Act of 1978, etc. I think FinCEN has taken important steps toward clarifying the application of their existing authority. And I think we need to continue to clarify, particularly so that banks and investors don't get cold feet, because we have no way of knowing today what second stage innovations that may have completely different roles in our economy these new technologies may offer us, and we want to be certain we don't do anything to take them offline.